Hey guys, today we're going to talk about one of my favorite bands, Intestine Ballism. And whenever I reach for something from this band, it's pretty much 99% of the time going to be the first record in Anatomy of the Beast. I think this is one of the most perfect marriages of the the consonant Swedish style of melodic metal and the American brutal suffocation-y style. They managed to do it pretty seamlessly. It doesn't feel like here's the consonant part, here's the discordant part. It all works within the frame of the songs to advance a narrative. I think it's really, really a successful record. The production is really cavernous, which adds to that melancholy vibe that I think is really successful. Let's talk about Melancholy for a little bit. A lot of people don't like to hear saccharine aspects in their metal, and I understand why. For the most part, when you hear common music, saccharine elements of it are used to portray human weakness. You know, if you're going to write a song about a failed relationship or whatever, you don't want to have weakness on display in your metal. And there's a difference between weakness and melancholy. If you have weakness on display, it's because you are lamenting your own lack of potential being fulfilled. And that's something that we don't want to explore in metal. That's weak. You don't want to do that. But melancholy, the idea of an outward sadness instead of an inward one, the idea that you can mourn that human potential, the infinite aspects of human potential being fulfilled by the great leveler that is death, that's a metal thing to explore. So there's nothing wrong with that. And this record is a really triumphant display of outward melancholy. I think it comes together the most successfully in the song A Place Their Gods Left Behind. If you are familiar with this record, chances are you're going to know this song. And if you look at the lyric sheet, it looks like they took the entire ideology of the band from the lyric sheet for this song. So it definitely means a lot to the artist, and it's a song that they still play live, and it's one of those songs where as soon as I put it on, I feel the goosebumps rising. Like there's something about the way it's constructed that is just so emotional without being cloying, and that's one of those aspects it's a fine line to walk, but when you hit it, when you can have that marriage of melancholy and triumph, it's adult emotions rather than like teenage lustful ones. So it's a great record. It's one of my favorite records ever. That doesn't mean that it's perfect by any means. There's aspects to the record that are where the arrangement feels a little piecemeal, and that's what happens when you're going to try to marry two styles. It's not going to be successful all the time. And in this particular song, there's a break where it goes into an American suffocation-y style riff for towards the end of the song, and then they just let the low B ring and then go back into the main melody of the song, which I do feel is a weak characteristic in songwriting. However, the riffs are so strong in this one that it makes an excuse for itself in terms of there is a band-aid over a transition that could have been made better, but the riffs are just so strong that the song stands on its own because of their merit. So what I want to look at first, well, probably the only song I really want to, the only riff I want to dissect on the song is the first riff of the song, which is it's equal parts triumph and melancholy, and I'll show you the construction of it. The reason it's so successful is because of the harmony that's played with the bass notes underneath. So over the top, it's your typical kind of tremolo picked Swedish consonant melody. So let me show you how that sounds with the other guitar added. hear what a difference that makes by adding that additional color behind the tremolo picked melody. And the chords that are going on underneath, it's a very familiar emotion that ended up plaguing the metalcore movement. And why is that? It's because of this interval. That's a minor sixth. You hear that in Blinded by Fear. So that interval, changing the bass note from open to this, gives you that emotional coloring that really does work. I mean, it pulls at your heartstrings, but it ended up being really abused by the Swedish bands, and then really abused by the American metalcore movement. When they saw that color, that emotional color you can manipulate, they're like, oh, let's put this on every trem-picked riff and then put breakdowns around it, and we have ourselves a song. So that this is kind of where it started. This is from 1997. Slaughter of the Soul was 95. People have been saying, has there been any good records influenced by Slaughter of the Soul? I think this is one of them. I can't pinpoint whether or not it exactly was, but the melodic structuring of the consonant parts really do feel like Slaughter of the Soul, but less of an inward sadness and more of an outward melancholy, which makes it much more successful in the metal pantheon. So I want to talk about that riff itself. I found a way to play it using octaves of the notes, so I could play both passages at the same time. So it opens up with that B power chord, the fifth, and then they stack the octave of the fifth note as the melody. So you end up with this really strong opening note. And then we move to that minor sixth interval, the at the gates interval, but the melody that carries over it is really strong. So that emotional coloring works in this case, and it ends up feeling more melancholy, less sadness. So you go from... So why does that work? You have, what is this, a minor sixth, you theory nerds tell me. And then you go to the major seventh, that one note shy of an octave. That kind of interval coloring, I think, it's really emotive as well. And it drops back down to the fifth, into a tritone to give you that feeling of unease. And then we have this minor chord, and then we end in major intervals. So you end up having this equal mix of the melancholy of the major sevenths and the tritones, and then you end with that triumph of the major aspect of it. So I think all in all, that's a really successful riff that carries you through the melancholy into the triumph, and then when it loops, it's back to the melancholy again. And that's kind of how the song works in microcosm. The song goes from this melancholy, and then it takes you through additional consonant riffs that have that saccharine aspect to them, but it's not inward, it's more outward. And then they break into like an Americanized suffocation-y type of riff. And then when they come back into this initial riff at the end of the song, instead of having it be trem-picked, you have the riff played as single notes. Which allows for the vibrato to come through and less that trem-picked, and it makes it feel like it's a singular voice, as opposed to like the multitude of voices that tremolo-picked intervals sometimes can sound like. So, and it kind of, the rhythm to it ends up progressing in the same way the end of Fade to Black does, where it just has that melancholy rock beat carrying the tempo, and then it fades out after a solo with these really wailing guitars. And wailing is like the most appropriate term. If you've heard the song, it really feels super mournful. If you read through the lyric sheet for it, you might be wondering, like, why did they choose such a melancholy for this type of song? And I read through the lyrics, and the idea of the basic song is that Baal, which is a god that represents a symbol of fertility, has an unblessed son, which is the narrator of this song, and this narrator ends up defiling a bunch of elements of purity, including a pregnant mother figure. It ends up defetusing the mother. So you have this inversion of purity, and if you look at the idea of mourning the finality and futility of human life, the idea of forcefully inverting purity, which represents life, it ends up actually working for the subject matter, even though it's very barbaric, and that barbarism is present in that Americanized suffocation type of riff. But all in all, it's a very outwardly melancholy song about the finality of life. And it really works on a lot of levels. And the entirety of the record has this overarching melancholy to it, but it definitely keeps the barbarity in it when it's necessary. So it doesn't let either aspect of the duality of the record outstay its welcome. And this riff, I think, is one of the culminations of that idea. And the reason this riff is so successful is because as the song progresses, the consonants kind of get stripped away. You end up having you have a few more consonant melodic lines, but it ends up getting less and less kind of emotive, and then it mutates into that percussive suffocation style before giving way to the single note passage at the end, which is the original riff. So I highly recommend checking out this song. As I mentioned before, it's not the most perfectly written tune, but it establishes who the band is. It utilizes tropes that have been established in metal, but it presents them in a way that is unique to this band. And I just think that as opposed to the multitude of bands that came out after Slaughter of the Soul that tried to manipulate that Swedish use of melody, this one actually brought out the best aspects of the consonants in Slaughter of the Soul, while allowing the true metalness of that American percussive death metal movement develop that other side of it, that other side of the coin that really it needs in order to be successful. And that's why a record like Slaughter of the Soul won't be timeless as much as this underrated one if you really were to analyze it, because Slaughter of the Soul is very one-dimensional and this is not. So definitely check out the record if you have not. Check out the song if you have not. Once again, it's Intestine Ballism and Anatomy of the Beast, and the song is A Place Their Gods Left Behind. So thank you for watching.